Hi, I'm Jackson Bass with Alabama Wrestling Forums, and I'm here with head Mortimer Jordan High School coach, Coach Pate. How are you doing today, Coach Pate?
Doing good, Mr. Best. How are you?
Doing very well, very well. Well, let me start you out by asking you, can you tell me a little bit about your wrestling background?
Um, so I wrestled high school at Mortimer Jordan High School under Terry Tingle, who's now an assistant over at Vestavia. After high school, I wrestled 1 year collegiately at McDonald University it's about in northeast Georgia, near Helen. Helen's pretty much a traveler's town, and it's right behind it. Um, that's about as far as my personal background with the sport goes. Placed in state twice, but other than that, that's about as far as my background goes.
And how did you get into coaching?
I guess I decided my senior year that I wanted to coach, and so when I went away to school, I was able to get a little bit more experience from a different coach. And I started working on my education degree. And once I left McDonald, I came back home. Me and my wife got married, and I continued to pursue coaching. I think in 2013, I started helping out Coach Richardson, who's at Clay now, but I was helping him out when he was at Pinson he had some stud teams back then, 2013 and 14 and 15.
And how did you get to Mortimer Jordan from there? I may have missed that.
Well, when I first came out of school, I was still helping football and wrestling over at Pinson. I had some postgraduate work that I needed to complete for my degree, and the coach over at Pinson, Matt Glover, was football coach, helped me get a job over at Oxford High School. And at that time, I didn't know who was going to be the head coach at Oxford. They were in a transition period, and so I think I may have been hired on before, maybe it was announced before Matt Hicks was declared the coach. And so I was at Oxford with Matt Hicks and Coach Peavy, who's now in Georgia, I want to say he was at Tallahassee. And that was the first year that Oxford won the state title. I think it was the 15-16 year. And, it was great working under Coach Hicks. Just being I was in there as the head middle school coach. That was my first time being a coach. And I was able to take the stuff I'd learned from Coach Richardson and apply it to my middle school practices. And once our season was over, I was really able to move up and work with Coach Hicks and Coach Peavy. And they've been some of the greatest people I've worked with. Just as much as I know about the sport, it's like they can pull things out of nowhere. They can run a practice with no flaws. They're just two really great coaches that I was very fortunate enough to work with. And I was able to get to Mortimer Jordan. I'd actually been hired on at Pinson to work with Coach Richardson. And then I think the summer that I was being hired on, he had decided that he wanted to leave and go to Clay because they had made a head football change. So he made that move to Clay. And at that time, a spot at North Jefferson Middle School opened up. And so I work here at the middle school, but I'm the head high school wrestling coach. And so when I moved in, I had met Coach Saint, who's now at Coleman. He was the head wrestling coach. He wasn't a wrestling guy. He needed a guy to come in to be the mat coach. And he would even tell you he's what he would call himself a CEO. He ran the buses, he made the schedule, but anything on the mat was not his forte. And so I was a good asset for him. And so he helped me kind of secure the job over here. And, after that, me and him worked really well together. He let me do the thing in the room, and he did all the other stuff. And he kind of knew he was going out. He knew he wanted to move up to a higher position. So he got the offensive coordinator job up at Coleman. And so he kind of started to train me about all the things that he did, fundraising, how to get a bus, how to have a banquet, how to get orders done through the office, And he was just, I've been very fortunate on the people that have trained me to where I've gotten now. Like stuff on the mat, I'm comfortable with, but learning all that other stuff and how to handle the politics has been a different story.
So, Mortimer Jordan has had a lot of success over these last couple of years. I've been in high school, and I was curious what your keys to success. I mean, you've had studs like Cariel Tarter, Brody Christmas, Sebastian. Oh, his last name is
Oswald.
Oswald, Sebastian Oswald, Michael Barnes. What are some of the things that you're keys to success to honing in on those guys' abilities?
Well, I'll kind of take them all one at a time since they're all kind of different. Cariel, he was a move-in from Homewood, and he would have been a stud no matter where he was. The first time I ever got to wrestle live with Cariel is when I realized this kid needs to be collegiate somewhere. And I want to say he was between going to Newberry, because I believe that's where his, he trained at Ironclad, and Elkins has a lot of pull over at Newberry. And I think me and the family that he was staying with were kind of like, you can do better than that. And so he ended up at UTC Chattanooga after a couple of visits. It was close enough to home where he could travel home when he needed to. He wasn't too far away where it wasn't uncomfortable for him. But that kid was just a great leader and a great stud. He could wrestle better than me. Two things Cariel did to me. I was never able to take Cariel down, and he's the only person that's ever made me bleed on a mat. He was just an amazing wrestler and an amazing kid, always humble. Sebastian. So he won it in 2019, and he was not a favorite. He was a kid that grinded and worked and just so passionate about the sport. He was one of my assistant coaches this last year. He came in and volunteered. He was a good asset to have. He was, like I said, he wasn't the favorite to win, but he was one of those guys that when he made it to the finals, that you knew he was going to win it, because he wasn't supposed to be there. He was probably at best going to finish third his senior year. And then Gillum from Springville went down, and Finley from Lincoln went down in that weight class, and it just opened up the doors for him to make it to the finals. And he caught Lawler, who's been a three-time placer. He placed this year. I think he finished third again this year. He caught Lawler in the finals. And it's just one of those kids that you're really thankful to have. Great leadership. Michael Barnes, I would never have classified Michael Barnes as a stud. His success was one of those guys. He came from football. He was strong, and he could throw a head and arm. So he was one of those difficult guys to train, because he wanted to rest on his laurels and use what he knew. And we kind of saw the results of that in his junior year. He made it to the finals, and he made it to the sectional finals and the state finals, and lost to Womack both times. And then his senior year, he had some ups, he had some downs, he had some ups. And then around late January, we were able to just kind of sit down and have a talk, and he became more coachable at that point. And he was, I think Womack was injured that year, and so we had to come up with a game plan because we knew we couldn't throw him. Had to find ways to score points. And we knew Womack liked to run a chicken wing, and so we went over a defense for a chicken wing that would get us at least 2, if not more. I think we scored 5 off of it, just a re-wing. Because the way Womack liked to run it, he'd step off to the side, we'd wing back hard. I think we caught him for 4. I think we won 3-4 in that match, and that put him in the finals. And then Brody Christmas is great kid, great family. He's a grinder. But, I've had him 7th, 8th, and this last year he was a 9th grader. And watching him mature those couple of years, he's turned into such a good leader for our program. And I think that's one thing that's kind of helped our programs these last couple of years is building leaders. And Brody's kind of the first kid I've had that's a leader from a young age. and we'll see how that kind of translates. But which is good because this last year I had one senior, so we're just a really young group, and so having a leader in that area, I think, is going to be very beneficial for us. And I think the leadership quality of it helps the room completely because when I came in, I think the kids that were seniors, I think they were juniors when I came in to be the assistant coach. They had been through Coach Otis, who's now at Jasper, Coach Eugene Hill, who's now in Florida, and then Coach Saint. So between 7th grade and 11th grade, they had been through 3 different coaches, and they didn't have that consistency. And once that senior class kind of got out, I was able to make the group my own and kind of controlled them in a way that they were able to cohere and work well together.
So, I did mention a couple. Were there any studs that I didn't mention that were interesting to work with, or?
Well, I had one last year. He didn't win it. He lost in the finals. Tyler McDonald, who was a kid that was the most coachable kid ever. He literally couldn't wrestle a match unless he was looking in the corner. It was almost like I was wrestling every match for him, which is not a bad thing to have because he wouldn't do anything wrong. He wouldn't do anything that was dangerous. And in the mat room, like, he would take whatever we were doing and he would put it to work in a match. And I mean, if you could get 10 of those kids, it'd be just awesome.
So we talked about Cariel a little. What are some really big things that you would see in someone who has the ability to go Division I? Like, what are you were on the other side of it. What kind of things their coaches are looking at? Because not many programs have Division I wrestlers coming out of them. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, in the instance of Cariel, he's an athlete. He's got speed, he's got quickness, and that doesn't make you a D1 athlete. The fact that he's coachable and intelligent, and he's able to make changes to his wrestling so that it benefits him. I want to say when I came in, he was a big cradle guy. We were able to get him into tilts, wings, and that was very beneficial for him. I watched one of his matches last week when he was at UTC, and his head block, his awareness on the mat. It's one of those things. That's one thing that can't be coached, is like awareness on the mat, understanding the situation, knowing the score. But he would have this ability to just push 6-7 minutes. I never once saw him challenged in high school. I think the most he was challenged was his sophomore year, but I came in his junior and senior year. I mean, and I look back and I was like, that was a really tough weight class. But Cariel just made those kids look bad. Like, to have a kid like that you could bump him up to 189 and he's a 160 and he could help you win a duel. We never did that, but he was just a kid that could do that. And, a lot of his work comes from Elkins over at Ironclad. That's where he'd go in the off season. That's where he trained. They took him in, took care of him, and just gave him a place that he felt like he belonged and wanted to work. And he was just a stud from the get-go. It just took him years to kind of put all that together.
So you guys were a 1 through 5A team last season, and now you guys are 5 and 6A. What was the biggest challenge transferring over into I would arguably say that 5-6A has been the hardest division, at least since I've been watching Alabama wrestling. It is the deepest and toughest division out there. What were some big things you had to tell your kids getting ready for matches, especially someone like Brody who won it?
Well, so going into the year, the toughest part was scheduling, because I think there's 69 teams listed on the Alabama High School Athletic Association websites that were in the 5A, 6A wrestling. And so my goal was, I want to find the biggest, baddest competition that we can find. I want us to get our tail whooped. I want us to get beat down, which really, I didn't realize how much it would help us until we did get to region this year. But we went to Athens, we went to Hartsville, we went to Benjamin Russell. We would have gone a little further south, but we could never stay the night due to COVID restrictions. We went to Southside. We had Alexandria come to us. We went to Jasper. I mean, there wasn't a bus ride that was – well, we went to Gardendale. That was probably our shortest bus ride. And just trying to find those studs so that our kids know what a stud looks like. And it gives you something to shoot for. And when we got to regionals, we had some tough teams in there. We had Moody, Clay Chalkville, Hayden, St. Clair County, one more, Springville. You know, our region wasn't a cakewalk, but the level of competition from what we were wrestling to what we went to was much lower, you know, aside from Moody and Clay Chalkville, to just, you know, they're normally top tier teams. I know Moody's been through coaches the last couple of years, but you know, they had Sutherland and Land. They had a 120 that was good. I can't remember who that was. The 45 was good. Dodd was good. And I mean, just trying to prepare for teams that have 3 and 4 state champ potentials on their team was just tough. And so we wanted to wrestle Huntsville. We wanted to wrestle Oak Mountain. We went to Hoover and wrestled. We just wanted to find competition because we want to be those programs. We want to build so that people look at us as, I don't want to go there, but I need my kids to wrestle those kids.
So my last you-specific question is going to be, like, so I saw on your Instagram that you got back into wrestling. You know, you took a good break from competing. And what was it like getting back on the mat for the state games this past season, or these 2 seasons?
Well, so we were prepping for the state games last year, and it got canceled due to COVID. But we have a good group of guys. Coach Otis from Jasper, Coach Pennington from Gardendale, one of my volunteer assistant coaches this year, Coach Buchanan. We had about 8 or 9 guys. We get together twice a week. I mean, we're talking about, I felt like I was the lowest guy in the room because I never had a state title. And, you know, we just got a bunch of hammers in there, and it was just fun. Probably the hardest part about getting into competing is dealing with injuries as you get older. This last year, I broke a thumb, fractured my foot, you know, just wrestling with the guys in the room. But I love it. I think last year I wrestled, he was a kid from Columbiana who's wrestling up north. I forget where he's wrestling, but he was a 19-year-old, 195 kid. And, you know, me and him had a 7-6 match. And that's just what I like. I like it to be fun. You know, I don't care about going out there and losing or winning. I just want to go out there and just enjoy the sport again. And I think that's part of what we need to do to grow the sport in Alabama is have those opportunities for those 20 to 30-year-old guys or 30 to 40, whoever still wants to get on the mat. I just don't think those opportunities are out there. And then, like, they're going to have the Battle of Best this weekend. I messaged the guys like, what about an older division? You know, us old guys want to get out there and get our butt whooped too.
Okay, so on my Instagram, I have a segment called The Weigh-In where a coach weighs in on a hot button topic. And my first question is going to be, do you think that wrestling in Alabama should be one division or multiple divisions? And if multiple divisions, how should they be split up?
Okay, so I love the idea of one division. I love the idea of the competition. I love the idea of one state champ, one true state champ. But when I look at the aspect of Grow Alabama, if we look at these 1As, these 2As, these 3As, these 4As, we want them to build programs. And those places become discouraged when they're not taking anyone to state. I mean, let's just take Susan Moore, who had a really good year this year. Last year in 1A through 5A, they're around 20th. But that program is going to build because they finished top 10 this year. And it seems like if we want to keep the sport growing, I don't think that one division helps that area of the sport. I think that, if you want to see that competition, go see Thompson. You're going to get your butt kicked. Go see Vestavia. You're going to get your butt kicked. But then you still have opportunities for those kids. Like, I have kids that will have opportunities to wrestle 3rd, 4th place matches next year in 5A, 6A. If it's 1A through 7A, I'll have Christmas, and I can't promise that Christmas is in the finals in the 1A through 7A division. There's just so many good guys. And if we were to break it down by division, we've talked about having, I like the 1A through 4A. Kind of hurts the 5As. If you look at the 5As, the best finishing team in 5A this year was Alexandria, and I think they were 17th, 16th, 15th, somewhere in there. And, that hurts their program. We're talking about a program that when they were 1A through 4A was finishing top 2, top 3. And, they had Christian Knopp. They had kids that would make it to the finals, and Jaden knew. They were a better team probably then, and they're rebuilding right now. But, we're one of the smaller 6As. If we were still in 1A through 5A, we'd still have a big team because I'm still doing a good job of recruiting at my middle school, bringing kids up through the ranks. If I had to say anything, I've heard several coaches mention a 33%, put the teams with the smallest 33% of population together, the middle schools with the 33 population, and then the largest 33% population at the top. You wouldn't call them 1A, 2A, 3A. You'd have to change it to like Division 1, 2, and 3 or something like that. And that's an idea that I've liked. But as of right now, I didn't like 6A when it was by itself. That would help me now if we got rid of some of those other teams. The less teams you have in a division, easier it becomes. I liked the competition level that 5A and 6A had this year. Do I want to wrestle 7As? Not yet. If it goes to it, we'll do what we can. We'll do whatever we're told. That's just like what I tell my kids. You do whatever the referee tells you. Whatever the state tells us is what we'll do. But I think that would end up hurting the sport because you would look at teams like Springville, who still has good kids. I think they had 2 get 3rd this year. What was his name? Got his name. But there's heavyweight and they're 138. Both finished 3rd. They're not doing that at 6A and 7A put together. I want to say they're the smallest 6A is why I bring up Springville.
Mm-hmm. So then this will probably be my last question. What are your thoughts on the ability for your athletes to go wrestle a club during the season?
During the season, I'm great with kids doing off season. It's a great opportunity for them to get better. During season, like my practices are 3 to 5:30, 3 to 5, Monday through Friday, unless we're matching on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. My only concern becomes, overuse. You're exerting too much. I understand where some people come from. I think the big one this year was Minshew at Shades Valley. I think that one was kind of put out into the light where he doesn't have a good practice partner. The coach was injured, so the coach couldn't really get out there with him, and it kind of hindered him. And we kind of saw that because we lost to Minshew early in the year, and we were able to beat him later in the year at 160. I don't know. It's a tough issue. My worry is that the clubs overtake the high school programs. If you get a club that's large enough that instead of doing high school events. They're going to travel the nation. You know, think about those kids that you might lose. If you tell Jade New that he gets to wrestle 10 times out of the state at different locations in the nation, I mean, that's great press for him. That's great for his college resume, or that's great for him getting to that next level, you know. But then we've lost a great kid on the team. You know, I think the guidelines right now are that you can do 2 out-of-team events per season, but I believe practices are only for the team that you're a part of at the school. And then I think you're allowed like private lessons. So if you want to pay a coach for a one-on-one, I believe that's allowed. Do I think kids should be punished because they get together with a buddy in their garage? I don't. If they're from different teams, I don't think that. I think, you know, I believe right now that if you get caught doing off-season practices, I want to say first time's a warning, second time is you're told to sit out. I don't know. I just worry about how it looks. I don't know. It's a tough issue right now.
Sure.
What have you heard about it?
I mean, I've heard a lot of coaches are very. I've heard a lot about. I didn't even think about this. Was kids burning out? Most coaches are kind of against it because, you know, they would say that clubs are, if you get a super club like an Ironclad or even Warrior, those a lot of kids they don't see what would stop the kids from not wrestling for the high school and only wrestling for club. So, but you know, and then you take away from it. But then, so yeah, I don't even know that much, to be honest.
Well, I think every kid wants to win a state title. Okay, that's the goal, that's the dream. So that's why kids are going to wrestle for their teams. You do have to worry about kids getting burnt out, because if you're doing club during season, then you're certainly doing club in the off season. But then you have to think, well, I'm practicing 5 times a week. Do I need 6 times a week? What's the benefit of it? Is there a benefit of it? You know, when I was in school, we didn't really have a club, but I don't know if you know who Shane Cochran is. He's now the coach at Satsuma High School, but he was at Fultondale at the time, and he would open up the doors to Fultondale High School, and we had kids from Gardendale, Fultondale, Hayden, Corner would just show up. And it wasn't really run by a coach. It was more or less just come in, here's some nap time, and you kind of had the opportunity to do what you wanted to do in the 2 hours that it was open. And I don't think that ever hurt me. I don't think it hurt the guys that went. I don't think we got burned out, but we did have that option, and it was free. You know, we weren't paying to do it as well as doing our high school stuff. I just worry that if we move straight to clubs, that the state will say, because wrestling is the redheaded stepchild of all sports, and it's going to be that way for a while until we can fix it in Alabama. But I just worry that if the state sees that, oh, we've got these clubs across the state, why are we spending all this money on school sports? Kind of like boxing. There's no boxing in the state. There's no, you know, there's a couple of clubs here and there that do boxing, but they're not sanctioned as sports in the state. What would stop the state from saying, okay, we don't need to sanction wrestling anymore. Let's just get rid of it in schools, and because the clubs have become so popular. If they're running it during season, why do we need high schools to run it during the season as well? Maybe I'm thinking too much in job security.
No, I definitely agree.
But I have no issues with clubs. I think it's great for kids that choose to do it. And I've taken it, my mind has changed on it in the last couple of years because, you know, when I was in school, there was one club and it was AWC. And there were good things coming out of there. There were bad things coming out of there. You'd wrestle some kids that went to AWC and they weren't very good. You'd wrestle other kids and they were fantastic. You know, we had Brandon Brindley, 4-time Was he 4? I think he won it 4 times at MNOrtimer Jordan. He was an AWC kid, you know, but you just kind of wonder, was it worth it or was it not worth it? But now that it's kind of expanded, we've got Ironclad, and then here in Gardendale, we've got Vicious. There's some good clubs up north now. And I think it's really helped the sport overall because we're getting kids that start at a younger age. And the parents aren't pushing as much at those younger ages as probably they used to. Like I remember when Brindley was in school, he would wrestle 4 or 5 times a week, and he was only 5, 6, or 7, you know. But I know Ironclad has 2, 3 practices a week, and what's good now is there's a bunch of kids in there, and that's gonna help the sport. And I think it's my mindset's changed on it as I've seen Brody grow, because you know I can only do so much with him between November and February, and then after that I get him for 1 day a week in the mat room for an hour. That's the state rule, and it just makes it tough on a coach. And I think I've got 9 kids now that are at Ironclad, and those are pretty good kids that are going to be good in the next couple of years. I'd hate to lose them on my team because they're doing club during the, you know, regular season. You know, I think that's just kind of what we look at as coaches. Is we like our kids, we want to keep them. I don't think they need to be somewhere else. But I don't think off-season clubs have hurt the state at all.
Well, Coach, I want to thank you so much for your time. And is there anything you want to say to my viewers before we close?
I don't have anything to say to your viewers, but I just want to say I appreciate your time and appreciate everything you're doing for the state. I know it seems silly that you send out all these rankings and they're on Instagram, but really for the kids, you know, it gives them something to look forward to. It gives them something to build on. And so I know it takes a lot of work for you to do those things, to break everything down, to put names where they go. And I know sometimes you make errors, but, you know, we appreciate you guys that are investing in our kids, even if it's something so little as putting out a ranking.
Well, you know, I thank you guys for the support. Okay. Well, we'll let you go, Coach, and you have a great day.
Thank you, sir.